Okay. Think we're ready. We're missing one. Looks like Dennis Fox, but it's 1:34 and we're gonna go ahead and get started. So appreciate everybody showing up. It's been a while since we've had one of these.
Hey, Dennis.
Um,
There?
just want to let everybody know we do record these meetings and it helps with transcribing summary minutes, but we also.
Perfect. We'll look for you here in just a minute.
For transparency, we also post them, they do get posted on YouTube, so people can go watch these meetings. So it's a public, they are public meetings. And anybody can attend them, but most public doesn't attend our board meetings, very rarely, we might get one or two, but. It does happen. The other thing is we do have parking validation too, right at the end.
Yep.
Tiffany does.
If you parked in the garage across the street.
Okay, so just ask her at the end of the meeting if you parked over there. With that, did you want to do a roll call or do you want us to just do kind of,
Want to wait for Dennis? Oh. okay.
yeah, we can get him when he walks in.
So Andrew Peterson,
Here.
Lily Johnson. Ben Taylor,
Present.
Patrick Falls,
Yes.
Dennis Fox is in the elevator, and then William
Present.
Kerwin, correct?
Yep.
And you prefer
William's fine.
William, and then Eric Johnson.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. You got the agenda in front of you. Well, first off, maybe we should just do, we have a whole bunch of new board members, maybe we should just do a intro around the table, just to say who you are, where you work, what you've been, how long you've been there or whatever, and I'll start, Lily.
Yeah, Lily Johnson. I work with K. Ruma and Associates. So on the consulting side, the design side of things. I've been with K. Ruma for almost 5 years and up here in Boise for the past 3. And then I've done consulting with my whole group.
So she represents our engineering position on the board and replaced Mike with.
Like, yep.
I'm Andrew Peterson, been working at Cloverdale Plumbing for 18 years, and that's where I started my apprenticeship. Lived here my whole life.
Pat Falls, Pipeman Inc. Plumbing contractor, do a lot of geothermal and radiant floor heating as well. Been in business since 1985, started in the Bay Area, came here in 94, then went to Breckenridge, Colorado for about a 7 or 8 year stint, and been back here since 2000 or 2007. Sorry.
Welcome, Dennis.
Sorry, guys.
That's right. We've got you.
Slow elevator.
Got your office here.
Is that what we're doing, is introduction?
Yeah, we're doing an intro. If you want to do an intro.
Yeah, I'm Dennis Fox, Fox Heating and Cooling, and been in the industry since about 85. Mostly residential, probably 20% commercial. No new construction, basically retrofits, service and maintenance.
Thank you. Eric.
Eric Johnson, I've been in the HVAC industry for about 20 years. Just moved down here to the Boise area last 2 years. Currently employed with RM Mechanical doing estimating for HVAC.
William Kerwin, Heating and Flow, Heating and Air. Been with them since 2005, been in industry since 94. Just,
Nice.
thank you.
Rob, you want to introduce?
Yeah, I'm Rob Lockwood. I'm Deputy City Attorney. I represent everyone from building department to a little bit of current planning to the mayor. To like the simplest of like public records requests, so kind of all over the place. So always happy to hang out here.
He's here to keep us all straight. Including me.
I'll try to keep it quiet.
And I'm Jason Blaze. I'm the city building official. Been here for 25 years now. So it's been a good run. great place to work and, we manage several boards. We have electrical board too and a building code board. So we appreciate you being interactive with us and giving perspectives on code changes, fee changes, whatever we got going. So it's been a while since we met. I think 2021 was the last time. So it's good to get a board convened again. And like I said, we've got some new members. Then we got Chad.
Yep, Chad Swindeman. I been with the city for a little over 10 years now. I supervise the mechanical and plumbing inspectors for the city of Boise and the plan reviewers as well. I've been in the HVAC industry for 28 and a half years, so. That's me, and then I'll pass it on to Ben.
Ben Taylor, apologize, I'm not able to make it in person today, and thanks for your patience. So been in the trade for 20 years, started out in service work, and then went to D-Best Plumbing for 10 years, and then in their commercial side, and then started my own company 8.5, 9 years ago, and spent a little time working with Chad back in the day before he started with the city. So just, I appreciate your time.
Great, thanks. Tiffany, do you want to introduce her?
I'm Tiffany. I'm the building admin. You guys have spoken to me a lot. Nice to meet you all in person.
Great. So we have the agenda here and then the introductions. So B, we got meeting minutes, but I thought we could just swap B and C. Because the first thing we really kind of do is we kind of need to have nominations and appoint a chair. Because we had Mr. Calkins was our chair for a long time, and I think Mr. Wisdom took over and then retired, so. So we're chairless on the board, and so. I guess as a board, that's your first task here. Is to either self-nominate or nominate somebody here on the board that you feel might do it, but I mean, if anybody's familiar with like participating in organizations and kind of knows the Robert's Rules of Order type structure or done that before, you might be a good candidate for that. Or if you want to learn it, just be that. I mean,
Yep.
So anybody have interest in that?
Should we start the music and?
No, we need to get some straws out and we got one real short.
There you go.
And we might even need a vice chair too, right? Well,
Yes, you should have a chair.
We should have a chair and a vice chair.
I'm sorry, Dennis, I interrupted you.
I said, if nobody wants it, I'll step up, but if someone's interested in it, please take it.
So what does that all entail?
So it basically means you kind of run the meeting. We kind of do intros and hand it off to the chair and you just kind of follow the agenda. Basically approval of minutes, ask for motions. That, and then just run through that. I mean, it's not super hard. We usually provide a script for it. In most cases, when we have more detailed meeting, this one's a little bit lighter, but just kind of someone to kind of run the meeting, basically.
Yeah, go from agenda item to agenda item, and then typically the chairman doesn't vote unless his vote's needed for a tie-breaking vote.
We've got a baby. Anybody else have interest or?
Yeah, I'll have interest in that.
Okay.
Get your name in front of you.
So two people then? Interested in?
Well, since we need a chair and a vice chair, we'll let you guys figure out which one you wanna be. Or who else we want. We need to be voted on, I believe, right?
Yeah, but I think we need a nomination from somebody and then a vote.
Mr. Johnson.
Bro.
I nominate Eric as a chairman.
Second.
So. Nomination by Dennis and seconded by Pat. So I guess all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so
So Dennis is willing to do vice?
You will advise.
Anybody want to put that motion out there on that?
Looks for Dennis Fox to be vice chair.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Great. So let's jump back to B then, and we'll kind of let you, Eric. I know a lot of them weren't capital pretty good, right?
They shouldn't, if you did not attend the last meeting, you should not vote on the minutes.
There's a lot here then.
I think, the last meeting, were you on the board yet, Dennis? No, so it'd probably just be William and Pat and Ben that were here for the last meeting.
Not that I remember. I think it was 2021. I seen the notes. Yeah, it was Garrett, Rick Garrett at the time, looks like.
Well,
I think Pat Falls was probably the only one here in the last meeting.
and William. Unless you missed that one, William. Oh,
Yeah, I think I missed that one.
yeah,
We just think, build on that then.
Yeah, I'll get Tiffany some language. We've had this come up before where we need language to be something along the lines of we're forwarding this to city council for approval, but they were not approved because we have a new board. Something else. Tiffany, I'll get you something.
Thank you.
And if I don't know if you've all read it, just the interest of what happened last week, it's all right there. If you have any questions, you can kind of let us know. Don't believe we have anything to follow up on.
I didn't have anything to follow up on it. I did read through it and it all looked good to me. Does anybody have any questions on them? I'd be open to answering any questions that might be out there.
Were there any large complaints from people with the changes? I don't think I've heard any from my side out in the field.
No, I didn't really hear any complaints from them.
We did fee changes.
Yeah, we did some fee changes to align with how it was written in state statute, when it comes to pulling permits for water heaters and boilers and hydraulic piping. And it was pretty straightforward stuff and I did not hear any complaints, but that's a good question.
Definitely complaints though. Having to pull two permits over
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the one issue we heard, yeah.
yeah.
We went into it quite a bit.
Yeah.
We lost some
Or we have
lights.
to do a refund on one and pull the other. Mr. Chair, if we want to move on to the next item, that would be, I think I'll kind of pass it off.
That'll be line number E,
Yep,
Yeah,
Boise City fee study starting 2024.
yeah.
yeah. So do you want me to go ahead, Jason?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Boise City is doing a fee study and starting fiscal year 24, which we're in right now. We put out requests for pricing to 3 different companies. One was selected, I believe Barry Dunn was selected. And at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, they're kind of putting up a game plan together to go through and what it's gonna look like for them to review our fees and see how our fees align with other jurisdictions and with current market value and stuff like that, and see if we need to make any modifications or tweaks to our fees coming up. And I predict that we'll probably see some fee changes and raises possibly out of it, but we won't know until we get through that fee study. And I'm not sure how long that's predicted to take. Jason, do you have an idea?
It's gonna take about, I think, 9 months, they estimated probably. And they're starting right now, but they're doing our whole department, right? So it's all of building, all of planning too.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have a lot of, virtual meetings and they will be on site a few times. And then basically they're gonna do kind of a full analysis, look at other jurisdictions regionally too. And then kind of make proposals. They'll do like full cost of service analysis, but they'll also say, you know, maybe you can't do full cost of service fees, but maybe you should do this fees or this fees. They're gonna give us kind of options at the end. What recommendations could be. Well, we haven't really had a full blown fee study. I think it was 2009 was the last one.
Quite a long time ago.
We've done a couple little tweaks here and then since then, but, so it's been quite a while since we had a full fee study.
Are they doing, population-like, study with, Boise in mind, or?
Yeah, I think
where-
they're gonna do both. They're gonna do regional, other jurisdictions, but also similar sized cities.
From different states, or, okay,
Yeah, just to get a kind of recommendation of here's what they do here, here's what they do here, here's the average. Cause we don't wanna be the highest, we don't wanna be the lowest, we probably wanna be somewhere in the middle or something. And so we'll look at all those. But yeah, it's. And of course, you know, ultimately, we would bring any proposals kind of through this board for input and review. Ultimately, that then goes to city council, they approve things and it'll probably be, I'm guessing it wouldn't hit till fiscal year 26, but. They'll do this study over the next 6 to 9 months, give us something, and then we'll start probably meeting with boards and looking at it and saying what's a reasonable proposal to bring to council. So. That's it in a nutshell, but there's things like, you know, expedited permits and things like that, and reinspection fees with tiers or things like that that they look at too. Is there any other items they wanted to look at?
Not that comes to my mind.
We've
Still
been,
early in the process.
and traditionally, we've been kind of low on fees and planning too, the planning side of things. So I'm guessing there'll be probably a little bit more on the planning side, I guess. And that's what the 2009 fee study said too. So it's really ultimately the council's decision in the end where we go with it, but it's good data to make decisions from, right? So it's good to have that analysis and have them tell you what you really should charge for full cost recovery, or here's something you should implement instead, or this, or this, or this.
Yeah.
We have some of those options.
Will we see some of those comparisons, like you're saying, of like what jurisdictions they compared it to, or
Sure.
those around?
Yep,
Yeah,
we could definitely bring that.
because when we do our fee changes, we bring it to the individual boards, so you guys will see, we'll get you guys' input and have a board meeting on, here's what our potential fee changes are. And run it past you guys as a board before it goes to city council. Just like we have in the past, I'm assuming, right? And you guys are able to ask for information in that time or whatever. So,
But we'll bring that data too, what they bring us.
Yep.
We might not bring the whole thing, because last time it was like this. It was the binder pretty thick.
Yeah.
But it helps, you know, it can help with staffing needs too, right? Like. Where are we taking longer on permits, and maybe if you make adjustments here, maybe we can hire and do better on permits, so sometimes that factors into it too.
Does it go into hiring more inspectors and things like that as well?
Yep.
potentially could be, yeah.
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 Which, yeah, we're kind of doing that now because of the, you know, the Micron project. It's really, it's gonna hit us pretty big. We added a couple of positions, but we're short, like on the plumbing side, I would say right now, that we might have to look at.
Yeah, we were having that conversation today, me and Jason, and we're potentially eyeing maybe 2026 having to maybe add an additional plumbing inspector to help with Micron and cover, we got St. Luke's coming, their big tower coming up, and we got Micron's, all that work out there, so we foresee a need that we're gonna get there to having to hire somebody.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's about it on the
Yeah.
piece study, unless there's other questions or comments or.
Will there be, the fee studies also include like penalties and all of that type deal? So infractions or whatever, or is it just the cost of the permits and such?
Just the cost, because the penalties are state law, right, Rob, the criminal penalties and.
So they can, we don't see those often,
Yeah.
and they could vary, so I don't think they'll be able
So
to.
it would be part of this. So,
I think what you might see is like reinspection fees be more like a.
Yeah.
Cause right now our reinspection fee is one rate and it's pretty low. It might be like, okay, this rate for the first one, maybe this rate for the second one, and now a third one, you know, maybe like. Yeah, tiered approach there, you
Tiered
could see that happening.
Yeah.
We have a few. We have some situations where that happens quite frequently, where we just keep getting called back and we're like. Why be here?
Yep. Yep. So,
And the same with, you know, that expedited permit. That's a really hard one, because everyone wants their permits expedited, right? So you can't really raise it this much, because everybody's gonna pay for it, and then you still can't get permits through faster. So you gotta raise it quite a bit. But not to where it's so out of reach, nobody does it, so that'll be part of it too. Yeah, go ahead.
when it comes to the expedited fees, that's on the building permit side, not necessarily on mechanical plumbing, because you can go out, you all know, you can go out and get our system right now and have a permit at the end of the day, but on the building permit side, you know, it can take, depending on what you're doing, if it's a new commercial building or a new multifamily building, it can, review times can take up to, you know, a month and a half on some of those, so the expedited would be for the building permits.
And right now, we do expediting for. Green buildings, for affordable housing, and then for like economic.
Schools.
Schools and schools. But nothing really much else, so I think they would like to see a little bit more added to that, but. Not so that it overwhelms us.
Yeah.
That'll be a balance to look at. And then what rate do you charge for that, right?
Any other questions on the fee studies? Okay,
So, moving on, next topic, topics for future discussion, city ordinance changes, potential VOBLs, code changes.
so this will be my topic here, but and this is kind of just some stuff that's out there on the horizon that we foresee that we know is coming or potentially coming, just to give you guys a heads up on it. One of them is we're working through our city ordinances right now. And part of it will be the mechanical city code, the fuel gas city code, and the plumbing city gas code, which you guys have the duty of reviewing anytime we make any changes before we send it to city council. So we will have a meeting coming up probably later this summer, I'm thinking, where we're gonna update our city ordinance to include some writing to get code enforcement as part of our, under our city ordinances. Right now, we're working through with our code enforcement for helping us out through some policies and stuff like that, and situations where we come across work without permits and we just can't get people to comply with us when we tell them you're doing work without a permit, you've been caught, you need to get a permit, and we just can't get them to comply. Code enforcement has the ability to go a little bit further with that and actually, writing citations, stuff like that, if they're not gonna comply. And so we're working on getting that written into city ordinances, and we're currently internally working on the writings of all those. And once we get it ready, we'll have another board meeting later this summer, those changes to you. And it's also a good time when we're adding that in there to look and review if there's anything else we want to amend or change or fix. And so I don't foresee anything right now, but I haven't really started digging into it besides the bringing in the code enforcement aspect.
Yeah,
That'll help attack some of the handymen that use more than paint and install cabinets.
Right, exactly. And then we catch them and then they just disappear and we never hear from them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and a little history too, in planning and development services, we used to have the code enforcement, code compliance group, they were in planning and development, and then kind of got moved to city clerk years ago. It kind of drifted away from us a little bit. They're helping planning a little bit. Now code compliance is gonna come back to planning and development services by October 1st and be back with us. So we're gonna just make sure we're better aligned with them this time around as they're in our department. Get all our ordinances and policies and lined up with legal, get that cleaned up, and so we can take on some of that stuff a little bit better.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So what do they do now if they don't
So they do,
enforce this, our code?
so they do like planning, some planning stuff, they do like weeds and the other stuff, bro.
Usually abatements, but they do, yeah, a lot of licensing, childcare,
Care,
miscellaneous permitting for,
graffiti,
yeah.
graffiti cleanup,
Abandoned vehicles.
abandoned
Mhm.
vehicles,
Yeah.
RV complaints.
So it's not part of the police that,
No,
it's just
no.
part of the city still.
Yeah, to kind of Jason's point, Vinny, a long time ago, it feels like a long time ago, I don't know, it really is.
Yeah.
There's a code enforcement that exists within PDS that would help out on all the planning and development services, including the building division stuff. And then there was city clerks when they handled all kind of the clerks licensing sort of stuff. And so they got merged maybe 6 to 7. Maybe longer,
Yeah, it
maybe
feels,
8 years.
maybe.
I don't know.
It was
They got
after I
merged,
started.
and so the emphasis slowly over time seemed like it became more on the clerk's sort of enforcement than a lot on the PDS enforcement. So people like Chad and his folks have actually been taking on a little more like enforcement activities as opposed to inspection activities. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing for us is a lot of our inspectors really aren't code enforcement, code compliance type people, right? They're just inspectors. And so to take some of that on, it's been challenging a little bit. And, so this will be great. We're real happy about it. We're glad they're coming back.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the big city ordinance changes for all of our, disciplines. We're gonna be tweaking city codes, outline code compliance much better with all our sections. And we've gotten training from them too on
Yep.
how to properly document cases, document it in the system, properly take photos with timestamps and proper notes, so we can pass it off to them in these cases.
Yeah,
too. So,
because once it gets to the point of writing a citation or something like that, they gotta have certain documentation to back it up, and we traditionally aren't used to providing the type of documentation that they need. So yeah, we've had all our inspectors sit through some trainings with the code compliance, just so they know how to start documenting stuff the way that they need to see it documented.
and we're still gonna do what we do, which is try to work with people to get compliance. That's our number one approach, but we just have to have this help for those ones that don't, right? Or just,
Yeah. And it's not a big percentage, but there's enough of a percentage there that we need it. But to Jason's point, usually through working with somebody, we try to get compliance with working with them instead of having to go down this road, but there is some that you just don't want to work with us. So. But so that's coming up for later this summer. And like I said, that'll be probably our next board meeting. There is some stuff going on at Doppel. You guys, I'm assuming all know Doppel's Department of Professional Licensing. Used to be DBS.
vision of occupation.
Business professional licenses, that's what it is, yes, and so. Their boards over there on the state side, they're the ones that amend things statewide and adopt codes statewide, and on the plumbing board side, they are looking at the 2024 UPC to adopt. Moving on from the 2015, it'd still be the Idaho State Plumbing Code, but it'd be based off of the 24 UPC. The board's evaluating it right now. I don't know if they're planning to take it to legislation in 25 or 26. But that's out there, and it's something that everybody on the board, when they brought it up to look at it, was fully in favor of adopting the 24 UPC and just looking at it for potential amendments. So that's probably gonna happen. I'm just not sure if it'll be next year or the year after. There was a wrench thrown in Doppel's program though, because John Nielsen, as many of you know or don't know, he left Doppel and went to work for Nampa. So running their building department. And so I'm not sure what the plan is there for the replacement of John Nielsen over there. And I did look today at lunch on their website, and the board meeting that was supposed to be June 6th has been canceled. So I don't know if that's part of it or not, but it is pretty solid that they want to go that direction. Like I said, it's just a matter of them getting their ducks in a row and getting it to legislation. And from what I heard from John Nielsen when he was talking with the board, they wanted, it's hard to run amendments the same year you run the code cycle, because if the legislation approves the code but doesn't approve the amendments, now you don't have any amendments. And if they approve the amendments and don't approve the code, now you've got amendments for a code you don't have. So John Nielsen was saying, providing information to the board, that we need to run the 2024 UPC, wait, see what legislation does, and then amend it the following year for anything changes that we want to make, so we don't get stuck in an area where we got amendments and no code. Or a code and no amendments, which makes sense to me. So that's coming up on the plumbing side of things over at Doppel, and gonna affect the mechanical side of things too with John Nielsen, because he oversaw both programs over there, just kind of like I do here at the city. And so the mechanical side, though, they are looking at changing it to currently, as it's written in state amendments, we've got 2 gas pressure tests, 20 pounds on a 30-pound gauge for ounce system and 60 pounds on a 100-pound gauge for pound systems. They're looking at changing that amendment to 1 gas pressure test at 60 pounds on a 100-pound gauge and getting rid of the 2. And there's been a lot of support for it. I'm fully in favor of it. Makes it easier for me as an inspector, and for you as a contractor. You only got 1 test parameter you have to worry about. And so there's a lot of favor, a lot of support of that. It's been an informational item at their board meetings, but I anticipate seeing it as an action item, if not by the end of this year, for sure, first part of next year, to make that amendment. And I think it's a good amendment. Another one that they're looking at on the mechanical side, and it's a little controversial. There's people on both sides of it, is allowing underground penetrations of foundations with gas piping. Currently, it's not allowed, but they're looking at allowing it. The UPC actually and UMC actually allow it, but the international codes, which were our gas codes under the international codes, don't allow it. Intermountain Gas is not for it. They're not in favor. They've said they've gone out to numerous houses, seen the pipe deteriorated from going through the foundation, or they've had houses settle and the pipe gets broken. And so they're filling crawl spaces full of gas. So Intermountain Gas is definitely against it and has expressed that interest to Doppel. And I don't know that I feel strongly one way or another, but I do see Intermountain Gas aside, because I've got apartment buildings here in town where we've had to go replace all the gas piping that was penetrating a foundation because crawl spaces were full of gas. So I'd lean more to not wanting to penetrate the low grade, but it is something, like I said, that they're looking at. So
Okay, if I remember right out of that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is technically right now the plumbing side can do it, but the HVAC side can't, because we're running under 2 different rules. Is that correct?
well, and it's a little confusing on that aspect, because the Uniform Plumbing Code allows it in their codes, and the Uniform Plumbing Code is the adopted plumbing codes. But when you go to the state statute level, the definition of gas piping isn't in plumbing. The definition of gas piping is in the HVAC codes, the mechanical codes, and the mechanical codes are under their international codes, and they don't allow it. So if you were going to install under the plumbing codes, you could, but if you want to get down to legalities of it, the gas piping falls under HVAC, which is why we had to make it to where you can only pull gas permits on the mechanical side.
Yeah, okay.
And
I
so-
remember that conversation at Doppel, and it was just an interesting.
Yeah, there was that conversation, but on the legality side of it, the way it's written in statute, it's under the mechanical codes and under the International Fuel Gas Code and the International Residential Code for gas piping.
Were they talking about changing that again?
They were talking about changing it though, because that was the other thing at the mechanical side of things, was we're talking about going to the UMC, the 2024 UMC, and getting away from the I codes, the IMC, the IRC, the IFGC. And I'm not sure where it came from. A lot of the board members I talked to over there said it caught them out of left field. They didn't know anything about it until it was on the agenda. And I've heard that it was coming from John Nilsson is what I heard. It was one of the things that he was pushing because he's on IATMO's board. And so he was getting pressure from IATMO to try and make the change. And so we had building officials from across the state attend. You were there, Dennis, at the last board meeting, but we had building officials from across the state attend and speak against it. I spoke against it. Why are we changing codes when everybody knows these codes, you know? And they want to go to one book, but then you can't go to one book and still have the residential code. You'd have to get rid of the residential code. So there's a significant fallout from it. And I don't know on the UPC side, but on the mechanical side, the UMC is a lot more restrictive than the international codes are. So.
It sounded like it went away.
It did. They tabled the conversation, but I heard through Doppel that it's dead. They're not bringing it back. So I don't know what their plan is for the next codes, if they're gonna look at the 24 code cycle next or from the international codes or what they're gonna do. And with John leaving, that's probably gonna throw everything up in the air over there right now anyway. So. That's pretty much it from the mechanical and plumbing board, but on the building board side, our energy codes are under the building board at the state level. And we go out of currently it's the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code. The Doppel ran some rules this year for their ZBR. We ran our ZBR rules in 23 and they all passed the state legislature. Doppel ran their building rules this year. And in doing so, they deleted some amendments in there that we had for piping insulation.
And duct insulation.
And duct insulation. And so the piping insulation, we had some amendments to be less restrictive than what was written in code and not required in certain instances. And those, I think it was inadvertently done, but they deleted those amendments. So now it goes back to the way it was written in code, which is more restrictive and required hot water piping insulation on almost everything residential wise. I have told our plumbing inspectors to keep enforcing it the way we've been enforcing it. We don't want to go back to being more restrictive, in my opinion. And I'm sure Doppel's going to fix it next year when whatever they run next year. So I don't want to have this rubber band flip flop of how we're enforcing stuff. So I've told our plumbing inspectors to keep doing things the way we're doing it currently instead of changing. And that's for hot water piping insulation. On the duct insulation, they ran a temporary rule to only require R8 and attics. And they didn't have a requirement anywhere else for duct insulation. That temporary rule was gotten rid of this year as well. And so it's back to how it's written in code for duct insulation. So
And is that both residential and commercial?
Yep. The temporary rule is residential only.
Okay.
So, but now we're back to what's written in code for residential. The commercial's always been what's written in code.
Okay.
Yes.
If I'm not remember.
Our commercial, I want to say is R6 on returns outside of conditioned space and R8 for supplies outside conditions inside the building, but outside of the conditioned area. Ductwork outside the building is R12, which is a lot of insulation.
And that's now rolled into residential.
No, residential goes back to the way it's written in code, and the way it's written there is R8 and attics. You can still go back to doing the partially buried ducts inside the envelope insulation or fully buried ducts in the envelope insulation, or R8 if you're above the insulation line, and then it's R6 everywhere else. Unless it's inside the conditioned space, then there's no requirement. And so starting July 1st, we're going to start enforcing it that way because that's the way it's written for statute as it goes, or for rules as it goes into effect July 1st. So I've instructed our mechanical inspectors to start notifying guys when they come across it in the field and let them know And then the only other thing I'd say to that was when they did that temporary rule, the reason they did that temporary rule was there was a shortage of flex duct. And when everybody was struggling to get flex duct, I mean, you guys all went through it, and I know contractors were driving to California with a truck and a trailer to load up a truck and trailer of flex duct from California to bring back up here so they could complete their jobs. I mean, it was pretty bad, and so at the time, we had stopped the requirement, because it's always been a requirement in Boise to have the crawl done at the time of the rough-in inspection. So we don't have to get down there and crawl around at the final and drag mud and dirt and insulation into the carpet, the brand new carpet in the house and stuff like that. So during that time, we paused that and stuff, just to let it be done by the time of the final. But starting July 1st, we're gonna go back to requiring it, the crawls to be completed at the time of roughing.
And how did that information get sent out to us?
We've instructed, once again, I've instructed the inspectors in the field to start, when you come across a contractor, start letting them know. So
Is there any chance?
Boise, we used to have a newsletter that would go out once in a while, but we haven't had the newsletter in a while. And sometimes we broadcast that information through the Boise newsletter. It's Build Boise or something like that was the name of the newsletter.
It'd be nice to get that kind of information ahead
Yeah.
of time,
Yeah,
you know, instead on a job that you're working on.
Right.
or Have one of the inspectors call you and say, hey, by the way,
right.
just so you know, this is coming.
Yep, and that's what I've told them all to do, is start letting everybody know now that we're gonna start enforcing it in July. But we're usually pretty good. If we come across a contractor, we know we haven't seen them in months and they didn't do it, we'll just say, hey, okay, we're gonna let this one go, but for going forward, anything going forward, this is how you need to do it.
Yeah. Well, Eric called me when there was all that debate about the piping insulation.
Yeah,
And then he called me the next day and said, wait, never mind now.
yeah,
Cause it,
Well-
going back,
right.
you know,
Well, and we were under the impression with that one that, because the Doppel, the rules they were supposed to run, and I don't know what happened at Doppel when they ran their building rules, took them to legislature. The rules they were supposed to run deleted all plumbing from the energy code, and it was gonna go to Appendix L. And, in the 2017 Idaho State Plumbing Code, which has insulation requirements in it. And that's what they were gonna go to, so that we were all set and ready to go to that.
yeah,
And then I told it was me that told the inspectors, hey, start letting them know that
yeah,
starting July, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And then I went to the rules to look at it and I go, these rules don't match. These aren't the rules that we last saw that was gonna be going to the legislature. And so that's when I called them back, says pause, we don't, and it appears like I said, they just deleted some stuff and didn't get the right, I don't know if they got the right rules, and it's my opinion, they probably didn't get the right rules to the legislation, got the wrong version sent. And so now it's where we're at, and that's where I told my guys, let's just enforce it the way we've been enforcing it, instead of playing a rubber band back and forth.
yeah. I mean, that's where newsletter stuff would be awesome.
Yeah.
Cause, you know, he's saying, well, I'm trying to get a hold of everybody, but I'm not gonna be able to do it. Call anybody you know,
Yeah,
and it's like you get the grapevine thing, but at the same time, people are gonna get lost in that shuffle.
yeah.
Or an email, electric email, it changes a little bit better.
Right, yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. No, and one of the things I've got on my back burner to do, and it's been there for quite a while and I've just never completed it, was establish a contractor's email list. And because we've got all our contacts, you know, through our Excel permitting system. Problem is, I've got some companies, I got 16 emails for, and some of them aren't any good anymore, some of them are good. You know, so it's trying to go through each one and figure out which ones are which, and then I could send an email out saying, hey, here's what we're doing.
Yeah,
But I haven't worked on it in about 6 months, but I was trying to narrow down which email addresses are good email addresses, which ones aren't, so I could start doing that.
yeah,
Sending out an email, just saying, hey, FYI, here we go, this is coming up. Or here you go, this is coming up, but that's on me to get that, finish getting that email list done for the mechanical contractors and the plumbing contractors. And it's just, like I said, a back burner thing. When I have the chance, I work on it. When I don't have the chance, I obviously can't, so. But and I'm not sure what happened with the the newsletter, to be honest with you, if it was a director thing or whatnot. We've had some directors change and each director kind of runs things a little bit different. Some directors are more about promoting stuff and throwing stuff out there, and some are like, yeah, I don't want to waste my time with this, you know? So. I don't know where that lies or where it happened with that. It just kind of vanished. But that's all I got for topics for future discussion, unless anybody's got any questions.
I had a question on the energy code, the maybe where stands if you go for the mechanical and plumbing, there was talk of deleting most of those from the mechanical and the plumbing portion of those. Is that something that they're still working on?
So this seems to be a reoccurring thing for about the last 4 years where the energy code gets attacked every year. And some of it comes from legislators over in the state house and some of it's being done through code collaboratives, and neither one of them seems to align. And so it's just, nothing's ever gotten through there yet, but there's been a lot of code collaboratives to say, okay, well, let's keep this, let's not keep that, let's delete this. And I don't think anything's ever got finalized on Doppel's level of things. And Jason knows a little bit more on that than I do, because he's visits those building board meetings more. than I do.
Yeah, I think what you're gonna see is the chairman of the chair of the building code board meeting with the chairs of these other boards, and they are collaborating more on the energy code.
Okay.
That's where it's at now, but you're right, there was an effort to like, let's delete this, put it to this board, or delete this, put it to this board, and they just did not get to that point.
Yeah.
The plumbing insulation was the one I thought they might have done, but then that went away too.
Yeah, with the last version, like I said, the last version of rules that I saw that they were gonna send to the state had the deletion of all the plumbing, and it was gonna go to Appendix L. I don't know what happened to it.
So I think they're just collaborating more as board chairs to involve each other, communicate better on it, since there's so much crossover, and try to get input from each board. So I
Yeah,
think it's always a work in progress in that.
right. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your view, the city has to, we can't change the energy code. However it's adopted at the state, we have to enforce it that way. We're not allowed to amend it. Certain codes we are, but that's one the state took our ability to amend away. So,
I've got a question on, the new A2L refrigerant that's gonna come into effect.
yep,
And how that, the requirements for that, so sensors, the piping going more than 2 stories encased, is that gonna be enforced, looked at? Where is that coming from and going to?
so when it comes to those A2Ls, there is A2L refrigerants in the mechanical codes now, the 2018 code cycles. However, they're early versions and they do change and they get a little bit more restrictive, I think, as you go to the 21 and the 24s, because I think they're realizing that. But right now, the 2018s, which we have adopted, doesn't speak to sensors, does speak to not being able to go more than so many floors without being in a chase. But we haven't seen that situation come up yet. But yeah, it's technically the way it's written in code with the A2Ls. If you have A2L refrigerant piping, you can't go more than 2 stories without putting it inside a rated chase.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like ductless systems and VRF systems, you're gonna have miles of it.
You're gonna have mild of it, it's gonna have to be in a chase, or, you know, architects are gonna have to notch out a chase area and have it be rated, you know, and it's keep that stuff from blowing up basically in there, you know,
But
if
they
you
don't
got
do
a
it for
leak.
gas lines.
Yeah. No, they don't do it for gas lines,
No,
but they're gonna do it for A2L refrigerants, which is less explosive, less flammable than the gas line is.
Exactly. I mean, is there no logic that we can apply to this?
Well, it hasn't.
I gotta ask, right?
Well, every time it's come up at the state board meetings and they brought it up to somebody's attention, the state board just says, yeah, it's in the codes, it's allowed, we just follow what's written in code. And so, it'd be a good topic to take to the state mechanical board, HVAC board, and say, hey, is there a chance for some amendments here? Why are we rating shafts for refrigeration piping that's low flammability, but we're not requiring gas piping that's high flammability to be in a rated shaft?
So right now, then the city and everybody's gonna be in 2018, and there,
Yep.
as far as you know, there won't be any amendments coming through for 2025. That's when this is gonna come. in.
So in 2025, they would have to be working for 25 legislation at the State House. Yeah, the board would have to be working on that legislation right now, and the only thing I've heard at the board, and they haven't even made it an action item yet, is the gas pressure test.
Okay.
That's the only thing I've been able to confirm that they want to do. But it's gotta be an action item, and Rob may be able to know a little bit more on this, but I don't know if it has to be on there too, so many times for an action item, or just once for an action item.
I don't know at the state level how they really operate
Yeah.
recently.
Well, I think from what I've seen, the building code board is gonna they're gonna skip the 21s. They're gonna look at the 24 codes starting now. They're gonna take 2 years to look at it.
Okay,
So I would guess that the mechanical will probably follow the same thing.
So maybe 2026,
and by then, the hype will hopefully,
yeah,
okay, good.
Well, I
well,
think we're on the same codes for a couple more years.
yeah,
But they're gonna start analyzing the 24 versions right now and any amendments to those 24s. But yeah, now's the time to engage at the state, because this is the time they review them, this is the time they look at them, this is the time to make amendments before bringing, it won't be this legislative session in 25, but probably 26.
yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, it's hard to adopt, we're in 2024 now, it's hard to adopt a 2024 code in 2024 because they realize if you sit back a while, which Idaho typically does, they're usually 3 years behind or more, you know, typically. But when you print those first edition of those books, you get a lot of errors in them, and you'll end up with multiple editions of the IMC, like the 2018 IMC or the 2018 UPC. You'll go through multiple editions because they'll print it, then realize, oh, we screwed this up, or we forgot this, and so we got to reprint it and include that. And so by the time you give it a couple of years, usually that stuff sorted itself out, and all the other jurisdictions or states that do adopt it kind of figure out the problems before it gets to you, before Idaho adopts it.
But definitely be involved at the state, or at least nowadays you can use Watchford to be just watching this thing's going on. You don't attend,
You know,
you have a Zoom link, you can just watch and listen, or raise your hand and participate if you want to say something. I like to go in person, but that's just me.
yeah.
Any other topics like that? That was a good topic there, that come to mind, or questions, or?
Can you go over what we do? What are our responsibilities or our authority, or what is the purpose?
Yeah,
Yeah, this board basically oversees mechanical, plumbing, fuel gas codes. You help us review changes, review fees, make recommendation of amendments. They're all recommendations through this process. And if the board votes for it, we push them then to city council. And then city council, decides to vote for it. Right?
Mm.
Essentially, you're a sounding board in the industry for these codes before we make changes or present changes to the city council.
yeah,
And also appeals. If we have Chad making a call on a mechanical item and someone wants to appeal it and files an appeal, we would bring that appeal to this board. So that's the other duty of this board. We don't get a lot of appeals, but once in a while we do.
Yeah.
One of my 19 years,
Not for this board, right? We've had electrical and building in the past.
electrical.
Most of the time we can figure things out, right? We don't have to go all the way to the board, but every once in a while we get one that. So yeah, so this board would hear appeals, and if you go on our city code. Go look up the Board of Appeals procedure. It'll kind of line out how we do that, how we handle that. It's kind of like we present, and the applicant presents, and then there's rebuttals, and then you guys discuss, and then make a decision. And as a board, you can't waive code, but you can maybe recommend alternatives that are equivalent.
Yeah. You know, and like I said, our city ordinances that we're bringing, you know, those, we, mechanical and plumbing and fuel gas, we do have the ability to amend at the city level. We try to follow with what the state does for the most part. What we've been seeing lately is if the city tries to amend something that the state doesn't, then we end up seeing legislation ran within the next couple of years to limit the city's ability to do it or to make it where the city can't do it, you know, and so we try to limit our amendments to the ones that we strongly feel about, and, you know, it's we see a definite need for.
And obviously administrative functions we do amend those and have to do whatever we do administratively, and that's, you know, fees, refunds, you know, we permit things.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, chapter 1 is heavily amended for cities usually to match what they want to do for their stuff. And even the codes that we aren't allowed to amend, we're allowed to amend chapter 1 on. So like the energy code, we can't amend it. When it comes into the body of the code chapter, you know, once you get past chapter 1, we're not allowed to amend, but chapter 1, we're allowed to amend because that has all your permit fees, that has your permit extensions, yeah.
The admin side of it.
Yeah,
Yep. And that's where all our amendments are. I think for mechanical, we don't have any amendments outside of chapter 1 that I can think of off the top of my head. For plumbing, the only thing we have amended outside of chapter 1 is that we enforce med gas. The state does not enforce med gas inspections, but we do at state and city level. But we got some big hospitals here that a lot of the areas of the state inspects don't have the size of hospitals that we have here. The size of med gas systems that we have here. So.
Well, I just want to say for Chad, I appreciate your guys, because I can call them, they call me back, they're really good to work with. Other cities, or jurisdictions aren't as helpful, and it just makes life really easy. So, thank you.
yeah, if there's anything coming up in the field like that, that we need to know about too, we're always open to listen to.
Yeah. Yep.
We
Yeah.
try to help, we try to be consistent as we can, but
Mhm.
that's a hard thing to do, but we try.
Right. So. If anybody doesn't have anything else, I think we can move on to item 3.
Adjournment? What's the process for that?
You just have to have a motion and a second.
Okay, motion to.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion passed,
You want to say like without objection?
without objections? All right, motion passed.
All right.
Great, thank you for your time, we
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yes, thanks everybody for taking time out today.